We could always go without the intro, by the way.
This is John McClain. This is Paul Kuharsky from ESPN.com, Jay White Sports. Welcome to Two-Tone Crew right here on TitansReport.com.
Your source for Titans and pro football talk. This is the Two-Tone Crew on TitansReport.com.
Hello, Titans fans, and welcome to episode 89 of the Two-Tone Crew. This is one of your co-hosts, John Boy, and we are the official podcast of TitansReport.com. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. Joining me tonight, I have the ever-faithful Jamal. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I don't know that I've ever been described that way, but I suppose in this case, it's probably fairly fitting.
And alongside him is also Josh. Welcome back.
Good to be here on a cold Wednesday night.
And a first-time guest to the Two-Tone Crew. He's going to be joining us for the first part of the show here. Ben Fennell, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, guys. Johnny Bay, Jamal, Josh, the three J's. Good to be in the house.
That's right. And as you can imagine, for a 2-8 team, we've been slowly running out of things to talk about. So all the discussion among Titans fans is really looking more toward the future now. And if you want to just take a couple quick minutes here and tell folks who you are and what all you do, because it sounds like you do a lot these days.
Yeah, I'm a busy guy once football season rolls around. This season I've taken on a little bit of a different hat, trying to really spread my wings and get involved in some other areas. But my background, I've studied at Drexel University in sport management, worked 6 seasons at NFL Films, working for the show Playbook on NFL Network. Brian Baldinger, Sterling Sharp, Joe Theismann. We had Donovan McNabb through there, Sean O'Hare, Mike Mayock, Matt Millen, Brian Billick, all those guys on the show. And then this past offseason, I just left, took a job with the Philadelphia Eagles in their media department. And I also work on the weekends with ESPN College Football on Brian Griese's crew in the truck as his spotter and his XO producer, developing in-game XO packages for analysis and replays and things like that. And on top of the Philadelphia Eagles and on top of ESPN, I'm also a contributor to Fantasy Guru, the fantasy football publication, offering insight and analysis to watching coaching tape and trying to provide a little bit more of an analytical spin to some of their fantasy projections. So definitely have my foot in a couple different buckets this year, but I'm busy, and that's what I expect when football season rolls around.
Well,
yeah, I was going to ask.
As busy as you are, we're honored that you're able to come on.
Well, it's good to be here.
Yeah, it sounds like you have tons of free time. I was going to say, it sounds like you have tons of free time to come on the podcast. Busy man.
Anytime, guys.
Yeah, well, we're not going to keep you too long here. We know you have about 15 minutes or so to join us. And really, I think a number of us over on Titans Report and a few of us on the podcast, we followed you on Twitter and saw what caught our eye at Mettenberger. And we got to looking into that a little bit. And really, that's, among Titans fans, all the focus pretty much is on Zach Mettenberger right now. And I know you do a lot with scouting for the draft. And I wanted to start just by asking you sort of what was your take on him coming out and maybe where he would have gone without that ACL injury and, of course, the diluted sample at the Combine.
Yeah, I mean, the injury was such a question mark and red flag around him. It was a serious injury. Nobody really knew how he was going to respond from it. You know, he wasn't a very vocal guy in the media to really let people know where he was at and, campaigning himself like you see some of the other guys do. But he looked good at LSU, and with Cam Cameron's offense, that pro-style system, he just seemed to have an understanding of a timing and rhythm-based passing game. So he had the skill set and, the history in the offense. It just mattered of his health. And the fact that Johnny Manziel goes in the first round and Zach Mettenberger gets drafted in the 6th round is still mind-boggling, and I still don't understand it. He may not be the sexiest guy, he may not razzle-dazzle, and create all the, the Sports Center highlight plays and making guys miss and chucking it up behind his back and, letting receivers make grabs. But he has the skill set to be a successful pro-style quarterback, and he's proved it so far.
And going back to that, you're talking about Johnny Manziel. I mean, gosh, if there was a redraft today, where do you think Mettenberger would go?
You have to figure he's going to be and you have to think a team like the Minnesota Vikings to maybe reconsider the Teddy Bridgewater selection. Maybe the Oakland Raiders say, you know what, maybe we'd rather go with the Zach Mettenberger if, hindsight being 20/20, and to have 6-7 games under his belt, in an NFL system and to have live bolts flying at him. He's definitely in the discussion to be a mid to late first round pick.
So in terms of that, so in his first 3 starts, just as a bit of an overview almost, anything surprised you, and are you surprised that he's already starting?
I am surprised he's starting already, considering I thought the Titans would give Jake Locker a full season and a full opportunity to take the bull by the horns and let this be his job to lose. Now, obviously, the injuries and things to consider, but it's the same old song with Locker. It's been the injuries. So, Whitehurst came in and, kept you guys afloat for a game or two. And if, Locker's not in there, you have to give the ball to Mettenberger and see what he can do. And if he can't do anything, at least you're learning something this year about a guy. It's valuable time for the good or for the worse,
Right. Well, we know there's certainly some critiques on Mettenberger, but just through these first 3 games, I mean, what have you seen that you liked? And when I say 3 games, the first 3 games that he's started here for the Titans.
What I really like is he has an understanding most of the time on when to get the ball out of his hands, and he understands the timing and rhythm and the downfield passing game. Now, E.J. Manuel got the ball out of his hands, but E.J. Manuel was a check-down Charlie, that his eyes went immediately to get the ball out of his hands. Mettenberger understands where to go with the football. Now, things may happen. Protection may break down. Receivers may slip. Balls may get tipped in the passing lane. But he understands where to go with the ball. And I think a perfect example was last night in the red zone, or 2 nights ago, the little angle route to Dexter McCluster in the red zone. The Steelers went cover 0, max blitz. He had a free hitter off his backside. He knew exactly where to go with the ball. He got hit in the face a little bit. The ball was low. McCluster couldn't grab it. But that was a big-time read and a big-time decision in the red zone to understand where to go with the football. And just a subtle move like that just tells you a lot about a player.
Was he a little bit late on that read? That was one of the things that it was at least said on the broadcast, and then...
I know Gruden mentioned that he was a little bit late. I thought it was okay. I just didn't like the throw. The throw was just a little bit low. He got the ball out of there before he took the hit. I'm okay with that. You just need to put it in front of the receiver a little bit higher, little things like that, and getting comfortable, that'll come.
So what do you think Ken Wisenhunt and Rustin Webster are looking for here in these last few games? Because obviously it looks like the Titans are very likely going to be picking in the top 10, maybe even top 5. And
right.
If you don't have to go quarterback, that really frees them up a lot. But, I mean, what do they need to see from Mettenberger? And we as fans, we know it has to be more than just what's on the field. They got to see the behind the scenes as well.
No question, absolutely. I think it's a good time to see how he handles himself in the locker room, the post-game, his preparation during the week. I'm not there. I can't speak to, how he talks to people in the meetings and what his leadership is like and how people respect him or don't respect him, and a little intangibles that kind of make a difference with the culture of a team. I'm not really, around to understand that. But from what I see, everyone has the confidence in this guy. And he's going out, and you don't have to win games as a rookie. Just don't lose games. Mm. And he's not losing games for your team. He's making throws, and he's showing people, hey, I can do some things out there for you. Now, there's a lot of problems out there. Other people have issues with pass protection. The receivers have been inconsistent. The defense has issues. I think Mettenberger has done his part, and I think everybody has seen that, which is a refreshing sign for the Titans. You could say, hey, we have something to work with here. What else do we need now? What do we have to put around them? How do we adjust this to be successful in the future?
Now, the Titans, they actually have as we mentioned kind of in the opening, at 2-8, they're really turning toward next season already. I mean, they're starting a rookie at left tackle, at running back, at quarterback, and they've also got the rookie on defense, Avery Williamson. I mean, what do you think about those guys kind of as a whole? Because as fans, particularly with Williamson, we see the numbers, but maybe not all of us know exactly if he's doing the right things. But, I mean, he's getting sacks, so he's got to be doing something right. But that class as a whole, just what are you seeing so far out of them?
Yeah, I think Taylor Lewan's going to be a great player. I think he's one of the the better playing offensive tackles this season. And you can even mix him in with a lot of the tackle rookies last year, where there was just tons of. I think half the league had a rookie tackle on their team last year. I put him right in the middle of the pack so far from what we've seen from him, which is more than okay. Sankey, I think they're still trying to figure out how to use him and what his place is, and how much play time can he handle. And those guys on the back end, the Jones and the Williamson on defense. Williamson, inside linebacker, is a tough position to adjust to in the NFL. And, as a Packers fan and seeing our struggles at inside linebacker, I'm a little upset we didn't jump for one of these studs that are kind of emerging this year, the Preston Browns in Buffalo, the Williamson, the Anthony Barr's playing really well, or Chris Borland in San Francisco. But Williamson seemed to adjust really well. He still looks a little lost in coverage and, defending people, but in the run game and pursuing the passer, he's full force, and he's a sure tackler, and I kind of like what I see. It's a tough position to adjust to, and recognizing the speed and a lot of different running schemes and how the offense is trying to manipulate you. But, I think he's shown well for a fifth-round rookie, being asked to come in unexpectedly because of injuries. I think he's done pretty well. I think it's something to work with and something to be optimistic for looking forward.
Are you surprised at all that a rookie, even when he comes in and seems to be playing well, are you surprised at all when they give him, the headset and he's making the calls?
That is a little bit surprising, especially Ray Horton's defense, which is a little bit complicated. I know he's starting to, jolt up the pressure a little bit. I could tell the guys are starting to understand the system a little bit more and play a little bit more confident and freely. But I think it says a lot about the player. And the coach would never give that duty to somebody that he didn't feel could handle it. So I think he must have built his trust in training camp and off-season programs and the preseason that, he must be a smart enough guy and, intellectual enough to kind of coach his defense and have that presence on the field for him. I've never spoken a word to Williamson. I don't know if he can read or write or if he could split the atom. But, he's doing something right to build the confidence of his coaches, and I think that speaks volumes of him.
You mentioned Sankey, that it seems maybe like the Titans are still trying to figure out exactly how they want to use him. Did you see him as an all-around back coming out of college?
I did. I had no reason to think he wasn't going to be a Gio Bernard-style every down back. I don't really know what the Titans think of him. And I think they're still trying to figure out. They have this kind of four-headed horseman backfield. I don't know if that's by design or if they're trying to highlight or accentuate certain skill sets by other, some of the backs. I'm not really sure. I think Sankey has shown you some things, and then you can point blame at other things. You'd say, hey, the blocking in front hasn't been great. The blocking by the tight ends on the edges has been a little suspect. What's wrong with Sankey if he's not producing? And I still think they're trying to figure out what running scheme he fits best in, if he could run routes. I saw him last week. They split him out wide. They motioned him outside the numbers and kind of ran an in-breaking route to him. Mettenberger put it right on the money, and Sankey jumped off his feet, caught the ball, and braced for contact at about 6-7 yards. If he was confident, he could have caught that ball and shot upfield and might have been able to hit his head on the goalpost. Little plays like that, I think they're still trying to figure out what can he do, where does he have confidence, and I think he's one of the tougher rookies offensively, skilled players, to evaluate this year. You really don't know.
Yeah, unfortunately, you don't know in part because of some of the maybe the first-round pick we took last year in Chance Warmack, and he's had a questionable career so far, especially for that draft spot. But I think one of the things that we definitely would love to get your take on is the upcoming game. You said that you're an Eagles employee. You have a decent bit of familiarity there. I think it was Macklin said after they sort of got trounced by the Packers that anyone could have beaten them last week, which is good news because maybe the Titans have a chance, right?
I 110% think the Titans have a chance to win this game. There's not even a question about it. The Titans absolutely have a chance to win this game, especially with a Mark Sanchez at quarterback. We know what Mark Sanchez is as a quarterback. We've seen him 3 or 4 years with the Jets. He's established a football DNA. You are who you are. And those traits will come out at some point. And in the Houston game that he came in for Foles and won the game, those traits came out. Now, it didn't necessarily hurt his team, and everyone rah-rahed around the touchdown pass and him winning the game. In the Carolina game he won, he had some of those flaws in there. It just didn't hurt his team as much. Even in the Green Bay game, it wasn't all his fault. But those traits emerged, and I think there are some negatives in Mark Sanchez's game that the Titans can exploit. With that being said, I think Mettenberger also is a great matchup against this Eagles defense. Maybe not the protection and some of the things in front, but I think Mettenberger particularly is a great matchup for this Eagles defense.
In terms of being in favor of the Titans?
In favor of the Titans. I think the Eagles are very inconsistent on the back end. Kerry Williams and Bradley Fletcher. They like to get a lot of 8-man in the box and kind of leave those corners and man-to-man and cover 3 to kind of fend for themselves down the field. Bradley Fletcher, last game was Bradley Fletcher's season. Gave up a bunch of big plays, a bunch of touchdowns, also took away a touchdown in a 40-yard pass. Did the same thing in the St. Louis game and the same thing in the Jacksonville game. He's been very up and down. I really like what Mettenberger's done down the field, and I think he's going to push the ball and give his receivers some opportunity. The play-action pass game that you guys have instilled at Mettenberger is fantastic. He looks absolutely incredible and comfortable in the play-action pass game, whether it's the post-cross concept that he hit Kendall Wright on last week for 23, the touchdown to Chiefs Coughlin in the red zone, I think, was off play-action as well. I think that's something he's going to be able to manipulate those second-level defenders of the Eagles, which Casey Matthews, Emmanuel Acho, Michael Kendricks is only a second-year player. With D'Amico Ryans out, I think there's some room to manipulate and create some openings across the field.
Now, going back to Sanchez, I'm just curious about Sanchez. What has Chip Kelly done to adjust that offense to kind of work around Sanchez's strengths and mask his weaknesses? Obviously, Kelly's a guy that likes to adjust his offense to the quarterback. What's he doing differently now with Sanchez?
To be honest with you, there isn't a whole lot different. It's just being run a little bit more effectively, and things are being carried out properly. So when you have a read option look and you need to go sprint right, Sanchez is carrying out the full sprint right action and stressing the defense laterally, as opposed to Nick Foles wasn't a press forward, I'm going to use my athleticism and legs kind of guy. He'd ride out the fake, immediately look downfield, and look to shoot a fadeaway pass, like typical 6'7" guys do. They think they can fade away and throw over guys. Sanchez is incredibly athletic. Great legs, great feet. He can catch the ball. He has huge hands. He looks like a stud in shorts and a T-shirt. He can just ride out things with his athleticism a little bit more. It just helps the offense. Moving within the pocket, back into the teeth of the pocket, as opposed to Foles falling away and being a run-out-the-back-door quarterback, which he had turned into this year. Little things like that and his little bit of athleticism up in and helping protection and keeping his eyes downfield are what really are fueling the offense. It isn't really anything different. I think the big conversation in Philadelphia is it a plug-and-play system? Can you literally sub out any quarterback and put him in there, and will he be successful? I think that's kind of been the talk of the town lately because Sanchez has done so well. It's, hey, is Foles really that good? Wait a minute. Is Sanchez really that good? Can you put anybody in the system and they'll be great? So it's tough to tell, but I don't really think a whole lot has changed lately.
So is the perception that the team isn't any better or worse with Sanchez or Foles?
I think people seem to like Sanchez. I think, his athleticism and, little things like his pocket mobility that he's shown this year that really hasn't been Sanchez's MO, especially in New York, of, hanging tough and, keeping your eyes up above pressure and sidestepping things. He's shown a lot of that so far this year, that if he keeps doing that, you can't take this guy out of the lineup. That gives your team a huge chance to win, as opposed to Foles with his eyes dropping, falling out the back door, falling away from throws and things like that. I think everyone's kind of riding out Sanchez so far. Now, there's a lot of other factors. That Houston game, Jason Kelsey came back at center. He's a Pro Bowl caliber center. The team is not going to be the same without him. Evan Mathis, they got back last week. Again, you need those two guys up there for this team to be successful.
One thing that I know is the Titans' run defense is terrible. And especially after this last game, that's my biggest concern. And coming in, I would have said just generically, LaShawn McCoy on paper is really dangerous. But then you kind of look at how he's done this year, and is he, I don't know, is he just really injured? Is he the threat that the Titans need to really worry about in this game?
No, I don't think so. Now, LaShawn McCoy's running style drives the coaches and myself absolutely up the wall. Has he earned the right to run that way and to kind of dance around and break off runs and kind of improv things? He ran for 1,800 yards last year. He has every right to do whatever he wants. It would drive me absolutely crazy, though, because he's hurting his team, and he's not running what's called effectively and, keeping the offense on schedule. Will he flip out of some tackles and have some highlight crossover moves and make people miss? Of course. But he's not one to fear anymore. And I think the Eagles still have some issues on the offensive line and really getting that push and that run scheme going, to help him out. I'm more afraid of a Darren Sproles kind of guy that hits things full force and might pop out the other side on you at any given time. McCoy, on every run, no matter how soft the pocket is between guard, center, guard, will break down. And when I say break down, that means spread his feet, bend his knees, flat feet, and stare and roam around and feel for an open, as opposed to just hitting holes. And that's what every linebacker wants from a running back is break down and stop in the hole for me so I can go get you.
That sounds a whole
and
lot
McCoy
like
has
what
made
the
some
Titans
defenders. Yeah, and, Sankey has kind of done that as well. And, I'm watching these first couple runs right now on my screen and watching Levitra and Lawan just crush the guy down the field with a double team, and Sankey's behind him just dancing. But get up the field. Get up the field, son.
I was even referencing Chris Johnson, unfortunately, as one of the biggest complaints is how he was a dance master. But
So it sounds like what you're saying is that I shouldn't have taken McCoy with the first pick of my fantasy draft.
I mean, you can't go wrong. 1,800 yards and all the highlight reel stuff, and you can't be wrong there. But it drives you crazy to watch him dance around and run backwards. And has Barry Sanders earned that right? Absolutely. And until it really becomes a problem, I guess McCoy can keep doing it.
Yeah. Well, Ben, you've already stayed with us longer than you'd even promised, so we really appreciate you coming on. And before you head out here, I wanted to give you a chance to tell folks where they can find you. I know you're on Twitter, and I don't know if you have posts on articles that you write for various sites, but feel free to go ahead and let folks know.
I do some work with FantasyGuru.com. It's subscription-based, but it's great information for any avid fantasy football players out there. It's FantasyGuru.com. And I also can be found on Twitter at the XOs of Life. That's at the XOs of Life. Kind of a little play on words there, so I can talk about all that other crap out there in the world. And I guess those are my two kind of ventures right now. And you can usually find my work on ESPN at noon on Saturdays. I will be at the Minnesota-Nebraska game this weekend. Get a chance to watch Minnesota running back David Cobb for another week. I saw him last week. Minnesota-Ohio State game.
I'm hoping the Titans might be interested in Randy Gregory.
Yes.
Oh, that's at the end. Yeah, I'll get another chance to watch him as well. Yeah, you guys might want to buff up that defensive line a little bit. Let me tell you, though, one last note. By all means, get Jarrell Casey matched up with whoever's playing right guard for the Eagles. Matt Tobin's in there now replacing Todd Harriman. He's a little banged up as well. They might go to Andrew Gardner, who's also a backup. Matt Tobin has been struggling all season. He filled in for Evan Mathis at left guard. He had to hop over to right guard this week because Mathis came back. Gave up a sack, a bunch of penetrations to Mike Daniels, who is very similar to Jarrell Casey. I think you guys can really cause some havoc in the backfield if you can get those matchups. But anyways.
Yeah, definitely something to watch for. Well, Ben, thanks so much again for coming on. And, man, we'd love to have you on again. Hopefully you can come on again sometime.
Absolutely. You guys got a lot of fun, young, exciting players to watch. I'll keep my eye on them, and I hope to powwow with you guys again soon.
All righty. Have a good night.
All right. Take
Thanks,
care,
Ben.
guys.
Thank you, Ben.
Ben Fennell, everybody, and great interview, I thought, guys.
Absolutely, yeah. I wasn't sure what to expect, but he absolutely brought it, and I think especially some of the insight on the upcoming opponent, that's one thing that we used to do more on the podcast, and so whenever we have a guest who has some good insight on the upcoming opponent, I'm always catching myself thinking, why don't we do that more anymore?
We
It
need
sounds like
to. That guy was quality.
He's really high on Mettenberger, I think you could tell,
Yes.
and thinks he can become a franchise quarterback for the Titans. Well, guys, we didn't get a chance to talk too much in detail about the Steelers game, so let's go ahead and do that now. Of course, the Titans did end up losing that 27-24, so I guess we'll go in a little bit reverse order this week. We've already done the preview, but this was, I mean, to be honest, it was a fun game to watch.
It was.
And you hate that you come out on the losing end, but the first time in a long time, we were in that game the entire time, and a couple things you got to love. You love the fact that we didn't give up a sack. You love the fact that we committed one single penalty after everything we've been through this year. And you got to love the way Mettenberger bounced back. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of negatives from this game, but there was just a lot to be positive and a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, bounce back after not a great game, and then not a great start to this game. I mean, and he was not gun shy at all after that pick six. Something like that could rock a rookie, and he came right back throwing down the field.
Yeah, and it's sort of fascinating to watch him play because I think that there's a certain element of sort of his cocksure, his confidence that makes me nervous. But then, my goodness, it's also got a really interesting edge to it in terms of he's not afraid to go out there and just keep doing what he knows has to be done. Mm-hmm. And so you're not missing out on opportunities. You're not worried about him turning into a turtle out there at quarterback. And that was just excellent to see. I mean, when he threw that pick six, I was thinking to myself, this game is going to be a disaster. It's the LeBeau defense. We just threw a pick six. We're already down 14. Oh my, or was it, I guess, 10 at that point.
Yeah.
Terrible. And I just thought, there's no way we come back. And we made it a game to the point where I was disappointed we lost.
Yeah.
And that is such a turnaround. A really good thing to see.
And
you know what? In comparison, I'm sorry, it's a comparison that I thought of him now, and obviously I'm talking about skill. I'm talking about playing style. So don't misquote me here.
Right.
It has a little Favre in him.
Mm-hmm. I loved, Josh, you had a GIF of it. Yes, I said GIF. I know there's a big debate over pronunciation of that. Anyway, but you had a great GIF of his celebration because,
yes.
I mean, you could see the fire. He was pumped up after that bomb to Nate Washington. He had the celebration on the field, and ESPN really did have that great shot of Roethlisberger looking on and them lifting Mettenberger up. And then after that, he's pumped up. And I'm kind of like Jamal. We haven't really had a personality quite like that in a while. Mm-hmm. And I guess you get to the point where if he can back it up, then hey, I mean, I'm all for the confidence. And he's still not been able to get a win, but man, I talked this week on Titans Report just about the trajectory he's on, which of course can take a turn at any point, but based on the improvement we've seen through 3 games, I mean, the guy's a rookie still. 6th-round rookie coming off an ACL injury, and he's already made that much progress through 3 games. Didn't take a sack after just last week. The biggest criticism was about him holding the ball, and you just heard Ben say that he feels like Mettenberger always knows when to get rid of the ball. I mean, that's just, man, it's hard for me not to get excited, honestly, about
you said
the future.
That, yeah. right, yeah. So, I mean, you're right. I mean, he hasn't won a game yet, but I think that Ben had a great point. He hasn't lost the games. It's not his fault.
Right.
He hasn't gone out there and lost a game yet.
And you really wish you would have had one more chance at the end of this one.
That's what I was going to say. Is it would have been nice to at least be able to measure that sort of intangible of clutch, to be able to see at the end of the game. And I guess for me, just given his confidence and everything, I almost feel like less in doubt on that clutch aspect. But I would have loved for him to be able to get that win in front of the home crowd on Monday Night Football, break a couple of streaks that the Steelers have going with rookie quarterbacks. All of that together would have just been great.
And speaking of not having go ahead. Speaking of not having a chance, you see this crazy stat? I think we had, 30 offensive plays? Yeah, and Bell had 35 touches. That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was something like 39 to 36 or something. We have to be able to get other teams' offenses off the field. And I know that, at least for me, I think the Titans' defense is coming around, and they're kind of decent. They're not good enough to carry a team, and that's a problem because our offense kind of needs carried. But they're a defense that, they may get driven on, but then they hold teams to field goals at opportune times, or, the interception in the end zone that really turned that game around. They're okay. But the fact of the matter is, if you always let teams have these 10-play drives, you're going to get worn out by the end of the game. And I think that's what happened, unfortunately.
Well, before I forget, how terrible was that challenge by Ken Wisenhunt? I am so enraged. There was nothing there. They never overturn those. Even when it's legitimate, they never overturn those.
I guess the only thing I'll say is if your approach is like his, which based on results I would say, is this a good approach? Maybe you should reconsider it. But his explanations at least are consistent with that, in that what he was saying is, if you look at the circumstances and the timing of it, if we had gotten that, it would have been great for us. And so he challenged based on like situations. And I think that I saw somebody, I can't remember who it was. It might have been on Twitter, it might have been on TitansReport.com, but they said you can't challenge hopefully. And I think that that's the problem with his approach. But his approach, his explanation, it's completely consistent. You know why he challenged, because he's being honest about his approach. His approach is a terrible one, but that's his approach.
Well, I think he's just trying to spin it as best he can.
It was exceptionally bad because that was the play right after Ben Roethlisberger got hurt, and that gave him an extra 2-3 minutes to kind of catch his breath after being driven to the ground. It was just...
That's interesting, too. Yeah, and what was interesting is this week, I think he said, he listed 3 people who gave input before he challenged.
Oh, my God.
And I guess it would be interesting to see. One of them was Ray Horton, so that kind of surprised me, too. But because isn't he coaching from the box? The whole thing surprised me, but it would be interesting. He said, these guys gave me input. I wonder how many of those guys told you, don't challenge it, and he did it anyway.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it. When it happened, I couldn't believe it. And because at that point in the game, we really needed those timeouts. Probably wouldn't have mattered the way Bell was running, but you really... I don't know if he's won a challenge this year.
He hasn't. He's 0-4, and his record in Arizona was pretty bad, too.
And they're just so blatant. To me, that was obvious. There was no doubt in my mind whatsoever. And I think a lot of folks are on Titans Report during the games. Almost everyone I read said there's no chance either. I don't know. Maybe he needs to hire one of us. He can pay me half what he's paying the current guy. All right.
Yeah, he could pay me nothing, and I would do it.
So, yeah, excited about Mettenberger, the progress he made. Disappointed with the run defense. Pass defense, hey, a lot of sacks. That blitzing.
Yeah, well, and it's a couple of quarterbacks who, I think because of success in the postseason once or twice, they're both considered, are they elite? They're kind of in that discussion of what does elite mean and are they in there? And 2 games in a row, I think neither guy, Flacco or Roethlisberger, really had a good game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that interception Roethlisberger threw, man, that was bad.
Yeah.
He's lucky he has a strong resume behind that, because if he had a bad resume, that's the type of interception that gets you benched.
Yeah. All right, guys. So anything else big stand out to you about this game? The 80-yard bomb, that was just such a surprise for one. Nate Washington, his lone catch of the night, an 80-yard touchdown.
That's a good one to have if you're going to have it. I would say, I think it's worth noting in my world that this was the first time that I watched Bishop Sankey run, and I actually saw little flashes, which is interesting because then you go back and his average is terrible again. His longest run is like 9 yards, things like that. But this was the first time where I watched and I was like, hey, maybe he does have something going. I really am just curious about him. There's a real big difference of opinion from a lot of people, where some people really think that the offensive line is a huge part of it and that he would have great stats and he'd be flashing so much more frequently. In this book still, that are saying hasn't impressed me at all. Like, he hasn't stood out. He's just, he looks like an average running back.
Mm-hmm. Well, that'll wrap up the discussion on the Steelers. 27-24 was the final. I think the most disheartening part of all of it is what I said in the opening, the fact that we did have one penalty and no sacks and still lost the game.
Well, but you see how much more competitive you are when you aren't shooting yourself in the foot, too.
Absolutely. Against a quality team. I mean, I don't know that the Steelers are going to win a championship this year, but I think everyone would say they're a quality football team. And just looking down the numbers here, it's kind of crazy that, I mean, they really controlled the clock, 39 minutes to our 20 minutes. But Mettenberger, on 24 attempts, he only had 15 completions, 263 yards, though. Roethlisberger, 32 attempts for 207. Obviously, that's what an A will do to help you. But he really did a lot with only limited attempts, I think. You really would like to see him get a couple more attempts, especially in a game like this.
If you guys could point to one thing as the reason why we lost this game, because we outplayed them for a lot of the game. You know what? It's simple, obviously, the run defense, right?
That's what I was going to say.
And our run game. There were times in the fourth quarter where, I can't remember which drive it was, but we went out and we ran on first down and lost like 3 yards. And it was like, if we had, and we were still up at that point, I think maybe even by 11 still. It was like, if you have a strong running game, that's when you lean on them and you just bleed this clock gone.
Yeah. And
then they can't come back and bleed it the other way with Bell. It was definitely the combination where, because we didn't have a strong run game, they got up and then they just walked all over us with their run game.
Yeah, it was like they suddenly realized, oh, they're blitzing this much, let's just run the ball up the middle repeatedly. Josh, I think you tweeted out that ESPN graphic. The runs up the middle were...
Yeah.
I mean, it was something like 90%, right? It was really up there. You knew exactly what they were doing.
I think it was single-digit yardage gained on either side, and all the rest of that 200-plus was up the middle.
Wow. Mike Munchak's offensive line, guys.
Yeah.
He can coach that O-line.
Unless he's the head coach. Yeah. Or exactly. Maybe, at this point you have to question, maybe he was coaching them just fine. He just couldn't pick them.
Right. Well, this week, of course, as we already mentioned, Titans are traveling to the Eagles in Philadelphia. Let's go ahead and do predictions. Anybody think we pull this one out?
Ben Fennell does. Or at least he thinks there's a good chance. Yeah. I've been predicting wins so many times in a row. My opinion in general is completely useless to anyone, but especially this year. My goodness. Why start predicting losses at this point? I might as well just stick to it. No, I honestly, I don't know if it's my memory from last year when I feel like they were a little bit more impressive to me of a team than they have been so far this year. But I think the Eagles are a really good team. I don't see the Titans beating them, especially not away.
Yeah, at Philly. And Eagles are coming off
Short
a
week.
Loss to the Packers, a very bad loss, 53-20. Yeah. How about you, Josh?
I'm kind of with Jamal there. I think that they're a better team than that 53-20 loss. But they're playing Green Bay there, and I don't know. I think that Chip Kelly is one of the definitely the top 5 coaches in the game, and I just think that they're going to bounce back against us, and I think that just based on what we've seen, I think that this passing offense is going to be pretty improved. I think that, like I said before, this all played out. Once you get a good quarterback back there who can get rid of the ball and who's not moving around all over the place, it's a lot easier for the offensive line to look good. So I think that trend will continue. I just don't think we have enough with defense in the running game to pull this off. I think it's probably something about a 28-21 type game.
Well, I might as well pick the Titans. I will say, I'll do a flip of the Pittsburgh score. I'll say Titans 27, Eagles 24. Mettenberger has his best game yet, and he finally gets that first win.
You know what's funny is I looked at the just sort of the team statistics between the two teams, and there's almost zero statistics that we are better than them on for the year so far. It's really depressing. It was like our average score per game is like 16.8, and they're scoring almost 30 points a game.
Yeah, I definitely think they're the better team. I'm anticipating a few Sanchez mistakes in there.
I wanted very strongly to make a joke to Ben, and the conversation just moved away, but I wanted to say that butt fumbles are definitely improved with Sanchez at quarterback over Nick Foles.
All right, guys. Anything else before we wrap it up? Josh, take it away.
Yeah, of course, we're the official podcast of TitansReport.com. Just go to TitansReport.com, click on the forums there. That's where everything happens. You can find us on Twitter, Twitter.com/TitansReport, or I guess it's at TitansReport, whatever. Facebook.com/TitansReport. You can send us an email to mailbag@twotonecrew.com. Send us a voicemail to 615-900-0282. On iTunes, just search for the Two Tone Crew, rate and subscribe.
And guys, thanks so much to Ben Fennell for joining us. Talk to you